Hello, everyone. We're back after, again, some hiatus, but there was travel and there was summertime. And I don't know, I'm leaning heavily into my white boy summer era. And there's some interesting NHL draft picks and all sorts of things. But we are back. I'm back, joined again by Elliott, my esoteric colleague. Elliott, how have you been doing? Have you been
No,
holding
I've been
it
pretty
down?
good. Yeah, holding down the fort, as my parents used to say.
Holding it down. So Elliott, as always, Elliott is the most strangest person I know. Really is responsible in many respects for a large part of my reenchantment. So I can hold him responsible for that, accountable for that, which is a good thing. But we will still hold him accountable for it. Elliott has somewhat recently, I would say maybe within the past year and a half, got me onto watching a guy that most people I think in the schizosphere know about, JREG. JREG had recently he's done a two sort of like a two-parter schizo breakdown. I'll link to those in the comments for this video. This video assumes that people have watched those. Um, he's talking about sort of the right-wing coalition uh, surrounding Trump. And I think, aside from being very funny, as most of his videos are, he actually had some decent, if not somewhat profound insights. So he sort of lays out a very much a kind of like the Civil War meme. What kind of right winger are you? Sort of schema. And so he presents some cool options. I have been thinking that I probably lie between two to three of these new schizo ideologies, and so I will out myself as a neo-crunchianarian, and I'll hopefully break that down about what I mean, and hopefully throughout all of this video, if anyone is interested, if anyone is still watching, Elliott can also out himself as what he is. I have an idea of what he is, but we'll see. And hopefully we can just talk about, I don't know. I think one of the things I like the most about JREG is his willingness to simultaneously, in a tongue-in-cheek way, but very meta modernly, also completely seriously create new terminological categories. I think that is fun and necessary in order to even begin to think about where we're at politically these days. Elliott, you're the guy who got me turned on to this kind of stuff. So you've seen the let me pull up the correct title here. The correct title is important. One second here.
Flat.
Um,
Welcome.
the ideological fractures in the right wing coalition video. Uh, where do you think you land on this spectrum?
I am probably still right here in the capital kind of blob,
Yeah, yeah,
is the end caps, right? Like I really have not
yeah. I think you
budged
haven't changed at all.
too much, but you will notice, right, there are some topological continuities, right, so to speak, as we'd say in math speak, between ANCAPs and various other subfactions. And so there's a direct link, right, from ANCAPs to, and it's kind of hard for me to see it, but the underneath RFK in the alt health neo crunchy category, there's a direct link there. And
Yep.
ANCAPs are in the same blob as Curtis Yarvin. And
Yes.
so what I would say is like I haven't changed in terms of my underlying value set, but the nice thing about the current uh right wing slash JREGs schizoidness and basically the right wingers because of our continued um uh contact with the left and the hard left and various factions of like weirdo leftists and stuff have had a significantly broader category of things to consider. And so what I like about Yarvin is that he is very frank about power. And what I don't like about the kind of euphemistically, a lot of people say the post World War II aura. I kind of prefer actually to say the post World War II mythology and the 9/11 mythology, right? Both of those
Right.
mythospheres together. What I don't like about this is this notion that a different one is the passenger pigeon, right? Which is the hyper interventionist dove, right? So soft power. It's like Hillary Clinton, right? They
Yeah.
want to be in everybody's business, but they don't want to nuke anybody over it, right? at least I respect somebody like Yarvin that says, "Oh no, we should tanks in Harvard Square," and I'm like, "Okay, great, we're in the same universe. Even though I disagree with your methods, at least we are clear what the problem is, right?"
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I did a this is interesting because this came out, I want to say 2 weeks ago, roughly. It's very interesting. I did not anticipate any of these things. I'm nowhere near. I am very much. I love JREG's, like I said, ability to think outside the box. I am very much not somebody who can think outside the box. I'm somebody who can think within the boxes that have been given me, and hopefully have some insights in those boxes. I'm really bad at moving outside of boxes unless somebody does it for me. So that's what you
Hmm.
and
Yep.
JREG have done for me. That's my testimonial right there. Uh, is
Well,
so
this is why I think,
yeah.
by the way, JREG is easily going to, in retrospect, have been one of the most important, like literal philosophers
Oh
of our
yes.
time.
Oh,
Like he's doing
100%.
actual philosophy. But
Well,
anyway,
and
continue.
particularly Anglophone, but not American. North
Yeah,
American, non-United
right.
States Anglophone. Yeah, it's very It's the Canadians have something to offer
It's the
us, I think.
Canadian invasion.
Yeah. Oh,
Him
yeah,
and
it's the
Jordan
Canadian.
Peterson.
We're so sorry about this invasion, but you just you got to smoke a dart. You got to chill out. You got to watch some hockey every once in a while. And then you got to think about ideology. You do have to think about ideology. Yeah, I think yes, Yarvin. It's interesting. A few, I want to say 2 months ago, I had it's a tweet that came to me in a shower. It was a shower tweet, and I hopped out the shower and then tweeted it. And it was just the picture of Bannon, and then it was actually the picture of Yarvin from his somewhat recent New York Times interview where he has kind of the Kubrick stare, like that, the threatening stare at the camera. And I think I tweeted out, "Inside you are two wolves." And which is really where I find myself, which is kind of, I mean, obviously it's supposed to be tongue in cheek. It's sort of that tweet rhymes with this whole breakdown because there is something obviously on paper kind of opposed, and he does, I should say, JREG quite rightly, correctly opposes Bannon and Yarvin, right? Because Yarvin is all about elite theory, right? Like anti-populist, kind of right wing, and Bannon is very much a populist right winger. And so on like yeah, on paper that it appears to be oil and water, right? But maybe you can have like a layer of oil floating on top of the water, right? Then the water can support the oil, and the oil needs something to float on. That's sort of my response to that. They don't, but I guess the deeper point I'm trying to make is in this new right wing sphere, you can have even within the coalition, but I would say even within yourself, you can pick and choose to a certain extent, right? And to a certain extent, you can pick and choose elements from different camps. And because there's this kind of Trump gravitational pull that brings everyone into orbit, it kind of works. I think it actually works really well. And so upon watching this video, I realized that really, I think actually inside me are three wolves. Elliot, somehow I keep getting more and more wolves pop inside me. If anyone's seen the wonderful tweet or the wonderful meme, the Star Trek Next Generation meme, have you seen this one, Elliot? Where it's O'Brien and it says, "Inside you are two wolves. Sorry about the transporter malfunction." Uh,
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yes, inside me are three wolves because I got well, maybe not even a wolf. Maybe I got a raven in me. I got two wolves. I got Yarvin and I got Ban, and then I got a raven because I got that RFK thing, right? Like, and I got a worm too. Those three, like the what are you called? Neo crunchy, post-racial fascist, and fascist, of course, is in air quotes, or at least should be, because what the hell does that even mean these days? I don't really know.
We're
Uh,
we're we're very, like, even people who would call themselves fascist and are properly in the line of fascism, like fascism is so over, right? Like it's not,
well,
it's not a thing.
I always say, like when I'm being cheeky with people, yeah, I'm that kind of fascist that doesn't want black babies aborted. So whatever kind of fascist that is, that's what I am, right? Like, and obviously that is sort of a troll, but it's also true. Like I'm like, no, I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't want anyone aborted. I want this country to work. I want people to believe in life. I want, you know what I mean? Like if that's
Yeah, yeah,
fascist,
yeah.
fine. Then I guess that's what I am.
Yeah,
Obviously,
like
yeah, yeah.
this crazy thing, like where the left believes that if you have a rich mythology, because they have a kind of narrow or poor mythology where it's like, hey, utopia, and then nothing ever happens, right? Whereas
Right.
if you have a rich mythology where you're like, yeah, things are happening, and happening by, a sort of peace in the feud sort of situation where sure, like, history happens, but maybe it's not a cosmic history. Maybe we localize it again and kind of let people do their own thing, right? We don't need a kind of grand global narrative to plug up into. But anyway, point being is that if if having a well-defined nation, right, with ethnes, right, as
Yep.
subsidiaries, if that's fascism, actually, I was, unironically, Colin, it's possible that I realized that the Millet system or the millet system of the Ottomans may be the ultimate right wing ANCAP
Well,
unification point.
well, you know
But
who's a huge fan of that
yeah,
is Herr Yarvin. It's
uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, Yarvin has
Hmm.
mentioned that like
Okay, that
explicitly.
makes sense. That
Yeah,
makes sense because it fits in well with the ANCAP defense industry situation. And it also fits in well with, okay, well, other types of right wingers would say, well, people will gravitate towards ethnic lines. You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, and again, all of this is by like by definition schizoid because it doesn't really mix, but the mixing is not the point, right? Like this idea of the perfectly harmonized, perfectly attuned, all of these musical metaphors, right? Uh, right-wing ideology is so, I would argue, is just so maybe even it's so modern and it's and then we have the postmodern breakthrough and then metamodernly you can just kind of you can just do things, right? You can just have things. You do not need to agree with everyone in order to love their ideas, right? Like this is
well,
and
so
Trump is the daddy of all of this, right? Like Trump's ability to be like, I like this, I like that. We're gonna mix and match. We'll see what works, right? Like his emphasis, whether or not he's actually ever going to deliver on that is totally a different conversation. But at least in the way he presents himself, right? He does seem to be somebody who wants shit to kind of work. And now, what he wants it to work for, right? You can disagree about, you cannot agree with. That's fine. But he does kind of. He's an outcomes based kind of guy,
he's very pragmatic, right?
and
Yeah.
that's what and JREG's pointing that out is very, very, I think, important. It is very like an obvious thing, but I do think that both on the right and the left, people wring their hands a lot about, well, what does Trump actually believe? And it's like, no, 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 no. What does he actually do? Right? Like that's what's important. What does he
Well,
actually
so
do?
yeah, there's kind of 2 points to that. Firstly, it continues to prove the rule that the left is purely ideology based, right? And the right is human based, person based,
Right.
So the right is willing to, and we see this still. There was a recent study out where the left has an extremely tightly constrained allowable range of allowable opinion, whereas the right has this far afield, wide-ranging allowable opinion range, and it's because right wingers are allowed to are willing to allow people who are ideologically opposed to them as long as they're following the same guy, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is why I say the right generically is more pro-human because that is a more human community-based thing as opposed to trying to force everybody to behave the same way, right? Like basically what I'm saying is the left is largely autistic, right? Like
Well,
almost unironically,
I would
right?
100% agree with that. I think, yeah, I guessed correctly on you. I will count that as
Hmm.
a dub. I'm like, Elliott's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
going to be pure ANCAP because I
yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and I respect that. I think that we both met in the libertarian space. I was probably never properly a libertarian. I don't think I really,
Probably not. No,
probably
I think
not, right?
those are topics that you're finding something. Look out, these are the people that are not buying into the narrative, right? So,
Yeah, I think it's interesting because what has brought me I think it's in retrospect. I'm being very Kierkegaardian here. I'm like moving forward and understanding backwards. I'm understanding backwards, right? Um, I was, so I'm an ex Bernie bro. Embarrassed to say, but it's we all have a past. But I mean, I think the reason what I like to say, and I know I've said it to you, is that the reason
mhm.
why I'm right wing now, quote unquote, although I wonder how really right I am. I think I'm really more in the center was the same reason that I was quote unquote left wing, although I was never really left wing in the past. It's like I want kind of stuff to work for Americans. I want Americans to be healthy was a big always has been kind of a thing, right? or at least for years. And so that also has, with the inclusion of RFK, that actually I think is something that's really now is really good. What he'll be able to do as Secretary of Health, it's remains to be seen. He has, I don't know if you've watched any of his recent interview with Tucker. Um, I like RFK almost more as a meme than actually as a real guy, and that's fine. I believe in mimetic power, right? I think that that's important. I think he has, it's interesting. At our unnamed church, Elliot,
Hmm. Hmm.
I had a recent rather not even an interview, just a conversation with a unnamed person about a product I had recommended to them
Yep.
for oral health, and this unnamed person said to me, "Yeah, well, it seems like Colin's not really that crunchy, so I'll take his advice." And then this unnamed person said to me a few Sundays later, "Wow, that stuff worked really well. You don't, and you're not really that crunchy, so I figured I would do it." And I responded with something like, "Well, I'm crunchy in the way that, like, if it works, right? Like, I'm
Yeah,
crunchy
yeah,
because I
yeah.
want people to be healthy and I want to be healthy, right?" And so this is obviously was a completely non-ideological conversation, but it does actually tie back into this. And I instantly thought of this video when I was having this conversation, is like the alt health neo crunchy, right? Like, it's like you don't have to be a hippie, but you just kind of want things to be nice and maybe as beneficial for the planet and people, importantly including and people, and probably really more for the people and the planet, people first. That
Well, it's
which JREG points out was actually kind of a left-wing idea for a really long time. Or at least left-wing libertarian idea, like non-interventionalist left kind of, right? Like maybe we just need to like have granola, this kind of vibe at least. Um,
No, it's really funny actually that you
yeah,
mentioned that because in my mind, if you're properly right wing, right, and properly crunchy nature, there's really a lot more intersection than the current political green. This is why I really hate the Greens as a political notion, right? Because they're kind of Star Trek space communists, you know?
right,
And
yeah,
so they're the types of people where a certain wing of them anyway would be happy to, it's do you like concrete or do you like greenery, right? Like that's kind of the difference, right? Do you like gray or green is sort of the thing. And there's the gray, there's a sort of gray green people that are like, we need to have like hectares and hectares of, solar panels so that we can force everybody into two cities and leave nature to be wild and free, right? But to corner humanity into like two cities, right? And then
right,
there's the like hippies that are like, nah, fam, we should live directly, return to Monkey type of situation, right? We should live directly on the land, right? Type of stuff. And that's where, you know, in my mind, right, I use the only soap that I have is made by Dr. Bronner's, right? Which is the arch hippie brand. But it's like, wait a
well, I
minute.
mean, hey, if I may,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also, it's funny you bring up the soap because I've recently, past couple months or so, transitioned to just using, um, it is French. Don't hate me. It's a French lavender soap, uh, made
Okay.
made in France,
Okay.
it's about as crunchy as the French are, but I
Yep.
mean it doesn't, and I don't like, I've stopped using shampoo. I just use this soap, and I am one of those weird people where unless I have some sort of illness, I will just take cold showers and with soap. And like it is a kind of I guess crunchy coated, but it actually just works better for me. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do this because it works better, right? Like that's just because I really just care about the outcome, right? Like I want
Well,
this
the
to
thing
be,
is that the old remedies, like the grandma's remedies, the grandpa's tricks, like all that stuff, like that traditional stuff, it worked for a really long time, and to a large part, it still works in many many cases, right? Like, this is why I try to interface with the hippies as much as possible because they got really good ideas a lot of times. So, for instance, instead of getting diagnosed for ADHD and popping onto the map and all this stuff, and besides, it's not that big of a deal for me anyway, right? I go and there's a bunch of mushroom tinctures that you can do that either give you energy if you're, suffering from the low energy ADHD thing, or focus or sleep. and they're all like natural mushroom tinctures. It's like, no, I just don't want to be dependent on the mechanized machine.
Yep.
And that's that's ultra mega hyper trad, like farmer before they're like, I don't need none of that city junk, right? And we've lost that on the right. We completely have forgotten that that is our culture, that's our heritage. And just because it's sort of like the neocons and stuff, which by the way are Trotskyites, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
ding, ding, ding. Anytime that basically somebody on the right wing is telling you, oh, that non-industrial remedy is left, like you should be thinking, no, that's a communist, right? That's a
Right.
communist because they're progressive, right? So
Well, I mean,
anyway,
and I'm not, but again, I'm not like doctrinally crunchy, right? So that's why I don't, I'm not only in the neo crunchy sphere.
yeah,
There
yeah.
are times where, like recently I had thankfully it was a nothing burger, thank God, but I was really glad I had, uh, a modern approach to medicine, right? For this,
Yeah, of
thankfully,
course.
was a nothing burger. So I'm not like, again, it's not like I'm not, and I guess that's why I'm like, I get the neo crunchy vibe, and I know most people in neo crunchy aren't like, they're not like
Well, neo
they're not
crunchy
like
also
Christians.
is like
They're
literally hippies.
right. Not all of them are so extreme. Like some would be like, "Oh, I have a compound fracture. I should probably go to a hospital." Right.
Of course.
It's just it's like it's a willingness to be at least open to something that's old, right? Open to old, is open to trad, something like that, right? Like you don't need
Yeah.
to be exclusively that. Um, and so yeah, I also forgot to mention too here. I do think, well, I definitely know for a fact that one of his little spheres here is conspiracy. That totally is also,
Oh,
I
that's
also
totally me.
well, yeah, you got some conspiracy in you, and I got that conspiracy dog in me too. So, I mean, how many wolves and dogs and ravens do we have in each other? We've got a lot. Like, we are like full of animals, is what I'm saying. Because I mean, definitely like, so obviously Alex Jones is like ridic, but he's also really fun. And I do think every once in a while he does have some profound ideas, every once in a while. But mostly he's just super entertaining. Every year, and it's the summertime, so it's a reminder to myself. Every year I go through and I try to watch or listen to his epically long Joe Rogan appearances, the ones that have been scrubbed off of Spotify. By the way, you can find them on archive.org. The ones where he's like the 4 hour long, like, what is the nature of aliens thing. And it's just fun. The conspiracy thing, definitely with MTG. She's insane, but I have always found her like an incredibly hilarious person. I would like probably love to like go hunting with her or shooting with her. I think that would be like so much fun because I kind of like crazy people because I am one and I have a lot of them in my family and I grew up around them. So I get like the crazy white person, crazy white lady thing, right? Like I can kind of vibe with that, right? Like I get that. Like that
Well, that's a very
you know,
like low class, like,
oh yeah,
yeah, yeah. I don't mean
because
that
well,
pejoratively,
as
obviously,
I was
right?
having a conversation with a friend recently, I am very highly educated but very low class. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm like, let me apply like a let's apply like Kantian ethics to professional wrestling, right? I'm one of these people. I just do this. I like the mix and match, right? It's
Well, again, like this is
yeah,
something that, like, because a lot of the right. So here's the problem with everything being based out of DC, New York, LA, right? Is that LA doesn't have any like real conservatives in them. They're all progressives, which is
yeah.
fine. Maybe we need some right wing progressives. The kind of like, these are the types of people that are like, no, we need to embrace the kind of space neogenetics, like we need to make the Ubermensch by genetic engineering type of people. Okay, great. Not necessarily my tribe, but whatever, right? And then the other side of it, is but that we forget is this kind of like low class educated southern scotch irish sort of situation, which I definitely spiritually fall into as well, being like an
We can, you
Alaskan,
know what?
right?
I'm gonna say it. All right, you ready?
Yeah,
I am in a very in an incredibly narrow sense,
yeah.
in an ultra narrow sense. I am sort of not necessarily a patriarch, but a leader of of a Scotch Irish clan, and so because of this, I'm indigenous to this land, and because of this, I hereby bestow upon you, Elliot, title of spiritually Scotch Irish, even though you are not.
Well,
And
and so this is what's
yeah.
funny, right? Is that like, and this is where the left loses their sauce, right? Because they think that the only right wing ethno philosophy, right, is effectively German, of which the Zionist Israelis, right, have the exact same
Oh yeah.
mythopoetic situation, right? So they think,
Yep.
oh, one genetic lineage, one ethnicity. But that's not how ethnicity works. That's not how
No.
it works in even the rest of Europe. Because
Yep.
Scotch Irish, English, like even Hungarian
Yep.
and all the Serbs and Slavs and all those folks, like,
Well,
you
if I
know,
may,
it's like a clanic structure. It's not
yeah.
like a genetic line.
Well,
Like go ahead.
and well, no, you're making this is you've unzipped me in the words of Frank Reynolds from Always Sunny. You've unzipped me. Yeah, the thoughts are flowing. I really think like there's something about Scotch Irish because I mean historically, like if you go back far enough, we didn't speak English, but at some point we adopted English or Scots in the Middle Ages as our own language, but completely changed it in the process. And then so in some ways we lost the ancestral tongue, but it kind of doesn't matter because we so changed the way the Anglic language we were speaking that we then and then you fast forward several hundred years and you get the Protestant Reformation and yeah, Calvinism is kind of cringe, but it does give you a very independent it
Well,
vibes
because it's Swiss.
it vibes very well with the independent spirit of those people, of my
Yes,
people,
yes, yes,
right? And
yes. The
so
Presbyterian, elder
yeah, oh yeah.
based, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and so it's very extreme and harsh and it is
Yep.
suited to extreme harsh climates like Scotland, like the border region, like and then you go send us to live amongst Catholics who want us dead. And then we get tired of that and we're like, you know what, we want to go fight some new enemies and we just come to the new world and just start banging
Which, by the way,
on the head.
Catholics,
It's
it's. I was looking at a map the other day, and it was really interesting. It was by like denomination, and it was crazy because Protestant, a certain, oh, okay. So it's like Spain, France, Italy, and Greek. If you're going to throw in the Orthodox, not really. No, those guys that I just listed off, all of them super duper hyper Catholic, right?
right.
And then you had like the Orthodox with all the Slavs, right? And then you had like Lutheranish, right? And then you had like Anglican, and then you had like another bound of Lutheranism. And it was just really funny seeing like how each religious proclivity aligned perfectly with like latitude slices, more or less, of Europe.
Yeah,
And it's like
it is interesting.
interesting, right? And so
Well,
it's like, of course, the Latin, invaders like literally do not understand yeah, yeah, right.
Well, and to I guess to put a final point on it was that Scotch Irish are Anglophone, but not Anglo,
Yeah, it's different.
right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
Anglophone,
yeah,
but not Anglo. And so they it's interesting because if you talk to pure Anglos, and I have talked to pure Anglos, they kind of think you're one of them because you in many ways are, right? But then your value system is so well, it is low. Like they're right, like they're like lower historically they're lower, right? Like and so
yep,
the weird honor culture thing that like is just innate inside Scotch Irish people. I mean, just to, so it's part of the Scotch Irish part of my family always butted up against the Anglo part of my family, and there were like actual like quasi beefs growing up in my family because of this, right? Because of this the tension because they did not understand either side, right? Like there was this like
yeah,
weird ships passing the night, and it wasn't like people were being necessarily nasty. It was just like there was not a like you keep saying this word I don't think it means what you think it means kind of moment, right? And there's like the implications, right? Because of the implications there was the weird thing of like, well, if you do something for me then I need to show it even in a sign, I don't necessarily need to pay everyone back for good things they've done to me, but we need to send them a thank you card. In some ways, it's very waspy coded, but like we had to. Okay, so then you get the
yeah, yeah,
Scotch
yeah,
Irish. Like I must show that I am deferential to you. I must show that I really, well, as the meme says, that with the old Appalachian grandma. I'm thinking about you. I'm appreciating you, right? Like you really have to like these like please and again think about it in the mimetic sphere, Elliot
yep,
JD Vance, right? Like a bright and shining star of the Scotch Irish right now. And what are all those memes with him and Zelensky? Have you ever even said please and thank you? And I think about that meme constantly because A, it's hilarious, but it's so true. It's deeply true for Scotch Irish culture to have you even ever said please and thank you. These are things that I would just naturally think to say. Did I say please? Did I say thank you? Every time. And then if you don't say that, that must mean something. And like the rest of these Anglos, and I'm not hating on Anglos, but right, like your standard American Anglo is just like, oh yeah, we're just be polite to each other, but we don't necessarily need to say the thing. And for me, I'm like, no, 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 you have to say the thing because that was just
Yeah.
how I was raised,
Yeah.
right? Like every time, you know, I mean, even to the point of like, you know, in my family, I could refer to my parents as mom and dad, but like if we were outside of the house and if we were like, interacting with some like quasi official person, even if it was just somebody at like a restaurant, I mean, it was sort of implied that we'd be like, oh, yes sir, no sir, even sometimes, right? Like, I mean, so that was kind of like, this is all just baked in, is what I'm trying to say. And it is interesting how we're far afield, but I'll try to bring it back.
Mhm.
The viewing the importance of culture, but not necessarily like culture over
Yeah.
genetic heritage, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
something because in many ways, Scotch Irish, quote unquote, when they get to America, do absorb other peoples, right? They
Yeah.
absorb the
This
peoples
is
that
the
settled
important thing.
around them.
Yeah.
They do. And so the Scotch Irish in America are 100% connected to the Scotch Irish in Northern Ireland, 100%, but we're not like the same, right? We're sort of we come out of that. But there's a lot of admixture, and this is why Elliott, I can claim you as one. Also, because
Yep.
you're Alaskan, and Alaska,
Yep.
in some ways, really does carry this spirit of like rugged frontiersman, individualist, but also hyper honor code because there is no law. Right, like in that area, there are only bears. There is no law. Um, and I do think that I mean, you're spiritually Scotch Irish. I am maybe properly. I'm at least half Scotch Irish.
Hmm.
I think this mixing and matching feels kind of natural, right? This mixing and matching of even like elements of my political thought, right? Like, yeah, I mean, like the post-racialness of Bannon, I can kind of vibe with, right? Because I really do care about America and Americans. But his willingness to kind of like want to hit his enemies on the head. Oh yeah, I mean, like that makes perfect sense because in Scotch Irish culture, yeah, enemies you hit them on the head. But but also like like connection to the natural world is really important. We're losing that. We should value that. Yeah, that okay. The alt health, the neo crunchy. Yeah, I mean, I can vibe with that. The idea of, oh, conspiracy, there's enemies among us. The Jesuits are here. They're trying to undermine us. Conspiracy camp, right? Yeah, I totally
Yep.
get that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then also well, but you do got to have standing pillars and paragons of virtue in your community. You do have to have the elite. Yarvin, right? So for me, I mean, maybe I'm just shouting to the sky. I probably am, but hopefully you're picking up some of what I'm putting down here because it's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
just feels the people, yeah, people are complex. People are contradict themselves. It's okay as long as they are trying to push in the right direction. It doesn't need to be a perfect mimetic system. There is no perfect political system. There never will be, right? Like you said,
Well, and I think
yeah,
it like okay, so actually it's really kind of interesting because when people say rugged individualism, right? This is sort of true in a certain sense, but it's funny because when I think back home, it's not so much rugged individualism in the sense that screw you guys, I'm not going to deal with you. It's really what it is. It's demonstrating to yourself and others the ability to pull your weight. And that isn't some sort of like hyper real, over socialized, like, thing. That's a real thing in Alaska. Because if you cannot change your own tire, like, and you get broke down somewhere where the next person to come is going to be an hour and it's negative 40 degrees, like, the seriousness starts stacking up very, very quickly. And so even if you don't have a truck, right, even if you got a little beater car, you better have extra hot hands. You better have like a blanket. You better have a backup plan. Like, all these things. Then, yes, this all assumes that somebody else can come and save you. So there is an explicit recognition in this kind of pull your own weight culture that the purpose isn't pull your own weight so that I never have to deal with you. The purpose is pull your own weight so that if you ever drop it, you know that everybody is competent enough to help you have a hand up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is what
right.
I think that down south people don't realize is how much people just kind of float on the system, just kind of working passively. and don't realize, like, no, dude, like everybody pushing in the same direction actually matters. And you could feel that in these like places that are far north, far south, those sorts of, essentially Arctic and extremely remote type peoples, right? So
Right.
that's kind of like the first frame. And then the second one is that, the other thing about like the Scotch Irish versus maybe some other kind of spirits, right, is that they are a people of both drive but also of life, right? And
Oh
so
yeah.
they do not require the mythic needle of history to change, right? Because I think that their kind of mythology is fundamentally cyclic. So continuous improvement is always on the table. Like doing your best is absolutely Scotch Irish values, and like being successful. It's not an anti-success thing. It's an anti like progress in the sense of we are changing history type of thing, which it seems like some other groups really do have, right? It's like we are going to change the world. And it's like, even given the AI revolution, right? Suppose that AI just takes over the cities tomorrow and just doesn't choose to exterminate humanity, which I think is likely. I don't think it would go out of its way to bother, right? You'd still have, I know, so several people that live in Oklahoma, right, and would be living their best Scotch life,
Yep.
right? And it would be as if nothing had changed, right? They just wouldn't have the
Yep.
internet, but oh well, I got my family, right? Like that's very much like the
Yep.
thing. Like you know, yeah, when you're highly family based, when you're highly clanic based, you don't need to have the larger social, like, you don't need to sign up to a larger meta narrative that the society holds with you. And this is what the left really, really does not understand about the localist right. They just have no clue about this, because the localist right, the federal government could disappear tomorrow and they would not care, you know.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree very much. And this is an episode where we both agree on everything, but that's okay. I mean, like, I mean, it's yeah. In any case, so yeah, yeah, like you say, the focus on the right of person over pure ideology, right? We're going to resist the pure ideology. We're not Zizek. We don't need to even try to be, right? We can just have the person, which doesn't necessarily need to have the great Führer leader, but you do need to kind of have like an emphasis on like the quality of the person, that's also important, right? Like, is this a quality person? Is this a legitimate person? Which doesn't mean perfect, but does it mean they're legitimate, right? And so, do they say please and
Well,
thank you? Do they actually do what they'll say they'll do? Now, whether Trump is that guy, I don't know, and I don't. Kind of in some ways, I almost don't care anymore because the mainstreaming of some of these ideas, I think, is almost just as valuable as any sort of actual concrete political win, because I think it sets the ground for more wins, to maybe steal a little bit of some thought from Yarvin there, right? Like, it's like the setting up for future wins, right? That's kind of like that's what I'm excited about.
I
It's
kind of,
it's a
I
time
kind,
wherein you can have YouTubers making videos like this, and JREG isn't on the right, but it doesn't matter. Like, he
no,
can
no,
make a
yeah.
video like this and outright say Trump's not a racist, not a fascist, and then outright say Bannon is a fascist but not racist, which is like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, like,
yeah, yeah.
it's like you can have nuance, and it's almost like there needed to be the battering ram of Trump to like blast some nuance back into like the discussion, because it can't be, everyone can't be racist and fascist 24/7. Like, it's just because I think even people in the center left or wherever they may find themselves, the liberals are recognizing that there was a lot of like semantic bleaching happening there, right? If you use the word racist and fascist for everything, that literally means nothing, right? This is that crazy thing which I've talked about many times on this and other shows. If you use a word too much, it actually stops meaning anything, and that's actually kind of a danger, particularly in the political sphere, because then it's like you are just saying noise but no word is coming out, right? So it's like the word has to mean something. And so, if anything, I think it's a win for, now I'll have to switch back into Canadian voice. It's a win for meaning and the meaning crisis. I think it actually is. So In any case, other thoughts. Yeah, that was kind of I shot my wad. uh,
Well,
that was it. But
so another really interesting JREG video just dropped, right? And it's about new birds, right? Because you're familiar with drone versus hawk, right?
yeah,
Or sorry, not drone, sorry, dove versus hawk. My
Dove
apologies.
versus Hawk. Yeah, Dove is like don't fight. Hawk is like rar.
Yep. And so he's like, okay, he's gonna give you another dimension, right?
Right.
So the two dimensions are intervention, right? Versus non-intervention, and then soft power projection and hard power projection, right?
Yeah.
So he puts
Yeah.
sort of Dove and Hawk as the axis of soft hard, and the non-interventions versus interventionism, right? He has ostrich, which is the put your head in the sand, don't intervene, and then the drone, which is intervene in everything, right? And again, so the ostrich drone, like it's like, hey man, we don't care whether it's soft or hard projection. We want it projected or we don't want it projected. Period. End of story. Right. So it would be a very standard Uniclef USAID, kind of NGO, like, oh no, we're not gonna go do war, we're gonna do foreign aid and get foreign dictators dependent on the foreign aid and then nudge them to right decisions humanitarian wise because we want to do it that way. And the they're like, nah, we need to go send out a sniper team, kill him and his family and everybody in his thing, and then we need to put up our guy and whatever, it'll be great because he'll be a democracy guy. And the drone would be like, hey, I don't care, everything always needs intervention. The ostrich is like, no, kind of isolationist, hyper isolationist, like just ignore all the problems. And then there's a couple other birds he's got, which is four more, which is if you're a soft, right, power projection on the side, right, and you're an anti-interventionist, they're calling you a dodo, right? So like a really strong pacifist might be a dodo. Um, they say yes intervention, but it has to be a super soft intervention. Is a passenger pigeon. Falcon is hard power projection and always intervening. And then Haas Eagle, which I'm not familiar with, is hard power projection, but generally not intervention. So extreme power projection, but extremely locally, maybe would be the way, like super hardcore, uh, defensive war allowed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
I
what are
would
your
say
thoughts?
I'm a Eagle. Like I
Yep.
don't think I don't like running around trying to find, people to hit on the head. But if you mess with me, then I don't want any sort of soft intervention. I want the absolute hardest intervention if you're like up in my grill
Yep.
and up in my stuff
Yep.
or people I care about, right? Like so it's not just me. Like if you're rolling through my neighborhood or even if you might start rolling through my neighborhood, then I'm like hardest power projection possible. Go. Like and just absolutely win and win so hard that they can never do it again. But I also am
Yes.
like whatever if they're out there doing their thing and they're not messing with me, I'm like, meh. Like it's really not my problem. Like and so I just don't I mean it's I can feel bad or feel any way about it, but it's not my like I don't have a moral right to go do violence then, right? In my mind, because it's not directly impacting me. Now, the instant it touches again me or one of my tribe, which on a nation state level does include Americans, and by that I mean American citizens. I don't just mean American interests. I mean like particularly American citizens. Then it's completely different, right? Then it's like, yeah, do what you got to do to win. Make sure you absolutely win, right? As much winning as possible because they dared fuck with us, right? Like, and they should never fuck with us. But I also think that's stupid for us to go around fucking with other people, right? Like, I think that's dumb. Even just from like the perspective of I don't want them to mess with us, and if we keep doing that, we're going to keep making enemies. So in some ways, I mean, like the Thomas Massey approach,
Yeah.
I think Massey's probably a little bit nicer than me. I think he's a little bit less extreme in the sense of if you do have to use force, I think he probably wants less force. But I'm like, nah, like if they start messing with us though, right? Like literally messing with us, right? Like particularly if American blood is spilt, particularly if Americans are kidnapped, held for hostage, that's for me, that's like, oh, extreme violence, right? Like is now warranted. And
No, exactly.
in some ways it's almost like gloves are off too, right? Like the ROE for me would change quite drastically, right? Because it'd be like, you dared start this, now it's going to be finished, right? Don't start it. And that'll be fine. But you wanted to start it, so now we have to finish it. And again, as I'm saying this to you, Elliot, I just keep reaffirming to myself how Scotch Irish I am. Like that's such a clannish
Yeah,
way
no, no,
of viewing things.
this
It's
is
like,
just
yeah,
exactly like no, no, it's
yeah.
very, and look, if you look at Trump, he's got some of that going on too with like the, with his background, right? His like, hey, we can, it's so funny, like these kind of
Well, if I may, sorry, if I may,
American. Oh,
if I
go
may,
ahead. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I mean,
yeah,
like you can see that with Trump in the Yemen approach, right? Because while I disagree that we should have ever been involved in the Houthi bullshit because it's bad,
right,
there are
right,
no good guys in that conflict. There are no
yeah,
good guys. The people I feel the worst for are the people starving to death.
for
Those are the
sure,
good
for
guys.
sure.
The power factions are not good, either of them, right? Um, that being said, when like you shoot or fire at an American vessel, I'm like, yeah, bomb them because you dared mess with one of our ships, right? Like, don't fuck with our ships.
Yep, yep. No, no.
Like, so yeah,
I listened to this military humor channel, and whenever he does characters of all different countries, right? You know, a recurring skit he does is one of the countries is like, oh hey, I'm gonna go touch America's boats, and like literally everybody else is like, oh God, please don't touch America's boats. He really,
yeah,
really likes his boats, right? Like, and then the guy touches America's boats, America just flips out, right?
yeah,
Absolutely like nuclear. And honestly, again, I think I would kind of agree with that approach a little bit, right? As well. Just in terms of like obviously being an ANCAP, like in how the question is always how would ANCAPistan defend itself against a foreign nation state? I'm like, I don't know, assassinate the head of state and his family seems like a very cheap way of winning. And everybody's like, oh, goodness, you can't do that. I'm like, okay, well, have fun. Like, what? Were you going to assassinate like every anarcho capitalist back? Or are you going to like, what? If I got like a free market of like insurance companies or like protection companies, like, what? You going to, you know what I mean? Like, invade, like, we'll just keep killing your top guy. Right. Like, the whole like state-based premise. It really is, and I'm sure that I'm kind of like YOLOing, right? I'm kind of like shooting while looking at the hoop, and I'm hoping I'm hitting it right. But like
yeah,
basically, I betcha that we still do actually do a version of the Westphalian Agreement, right? Which is, oh no, heads of state are off the table because I am also a head of state, right? Like there's what I'm saying is even though the elites, the global elites are against each other and they have some factions, they do have gentlemen's rules of like, we don't kill each other directly. We use our little pawns to kill each other. And it's like, okay, well, if you live in Pura and Kapistan, like if you're the IRA, you know, it's not complicated, right? They're already trying to kill you. Who cares, right? Like, it's one of those things
yeah.
where,
I
you
hear what
know,
you're saying. You're going to get
yeah.
absolutely no sympathy for the IRA from me, especially vis-a-vis everything I've said about Scotch Irish so far. But yes, I uh, I
No, no,
actually
the
what
principle makes sense, right?
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're probably already on watch lists, and this channel will definitely get shut down for this. But yeah, But even for me, despite all that, I won't actually say on this show what I think should happen to the IRA. But it's not friendly. But yes, yeah, I hear
Well,
what you're
they are
saying. I hear what
communists,
you're
right?
saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hear
yeah,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no, for sure, for sure. Like basically, like, look, everybody likes to say, oh, well, you can't. I'm like, well, okay, like unless they were willing to counter assassin back, which again, where is the will, right? Anyway, regardless, like, or a crazy thought, and this would be again maybe this would be more of a passenger pigeon. Where we want to intervene everywhere, but we don't want to use explicit force. I mean, Epstein, perfect example of that. How do you control the nation's billionaires? Blackmail is how you do that. So you don't
yeah.
got to point a gun at their head. All you got to do is just either, manufacture or catch them in the act or whatever, right? A bunch
Right.
of seedy stuff, and you've got their control. You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, it's kind of, look, violence is sometimes the solution. obviously, but it's not clear that war is always the solution, right? I
Agreed.
think
Agreed. Yeah.
when somebody like Thomas 777 says war is like the seasons, I'm like, I think feuds are like the seasons.
Feuds, man. Yeah. But people like him are right-wing Hegelians and are modernists and cannot
Correct.
they
Correct.
only they quite literally only have total war in their brain because they don't get they don't understand perennial feuds. And if anyone's been watching us for long enough, you know that Elliot and I are big about feuds.
We're
Uh,
so big about
it's
feuds
feud theory. This is just feud theory. Keep
over and over again,
over and
right?
over again. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a feud. But
I
no,
guess
this is
I will say this. How about this, Elliot? Would you stand by this?
mm, mm,
Uh,
mm.
in a way to maybe start wrapping things up.
Yep.
Uh, avoid war, embrace feud.
Yes,
Something like that.
because we are fallen, right? So whatever political system involve yourself with should like recognize that we are fallen and that we are permanently fallen, right? Like, maybe okay, here's what I would say. I wouldn't say total depravity, I would say permanent depravity. Right? Like we're incapable of not being depraved, right?
I would say terminal depravity.
Okay, that's
Our
good.
depravity kills us in the end, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Terminal depravity is also, I could totally sign on with that marketing, right? And
yeah.
so in that end, right, so many political systems, including even quote unquote pragmatic ones, assume that depravity is non-terminal, right? That it's healable. And it's like, it's just not, dude. And so it's like feuding will just happen. So the question
Yep.
is, how do you do it in a virtuous way? And it is virtuous. It is possible in literally the old style. I didn't
Well,
realize that.
you know
Would you
what you're
say men?
arguing for
Mm-mm.
is chivalry.
Oh well, there you go. Yeah, knightly
That
honor, all
is
that
what
stuff. Yeah,
what you're arguing for is chivalry. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, I guess an honor code might be a more generic term because chivalry
More
is.
generic for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
essentially,
But
what you're
yes,
arguing for is chivalry, right? Like that's
correct.
what you're.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right. Because the problem is every like it's so funny. Like the notion of chivalry, right, as a unironic notion, or it really gets named with Don Quixote, sort of, right? Or our
Right.
version of chivalry is Don Quixote. But the funny thing about Don Quixote, right, is that which by the way is where the word quixotic comes from.
Yep.
Um, funny thing about Don Quixote is that like he is making fun of the fact that chivalry had already died at that point, right? So
Right.
how about
Yeah.
that? You know what I mean? Like the particular chivalric code was already dead. So the question is, what does it mean to be honorable in a? It's funny. I was talking about kind of white collar thugs, right? And it's like white collar brawlers, and it's sort of hard for people who are not white collar to realize, like, no, dude, there's high class, low class, right? It's all doing the same like mental work, right, and all that
Right.
stuff. But fundamentally, there's people who are very polished and pristine within that environment, and then there's people who will backstab you, right, and they'll
Right.
do it in the
Yeah.
most gruesome, horrific ways. And it's like, okay, well, how do you
Just like
protect
you can
yourself?
have low class thugs who are
Yeah,
real just nasty. I mean, bad
nasty
hombres,
little
the
guys.
little nasty little guys, bad hombres, whatever you want. Yeah. And then you can have like what I would call like your working class your working class chiefs maybe, or your working class
Yes,
kings,
yes,
your working
yes,
class in a way nobility, right? Like that
yes,
they
yes.
command respect of their peers, and they adjudicate disagreements in very much of like,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
this kind of King Solomonic fashion, right? They
Yep.
and maybe in a real woo esoteric way, Solomonically, they kind of judge and weigh spirits, right? Like,
Yeah.
is this person is this a greedy thing? Is this a virtuous thing? I've met people like this. They are few and far between, and a lot of people lie on the spectrum, right? But I do think that you can have this the noble working class, right? Who is not necessarily knee jerkly opposed to other classes, but understands that for the hierarchy to work, you have to have everyone working in different ways, but towards kind of the same ends. I
Right.
mean, I'll tell you, I'm certain you've had this experience. Um, I'm somebody, I think you're in a similar fashion, sort of. I'm somebody who's, like I said, highly educated but low class, and
Mhm.
in terms of my heritage, my ancestry, my raising, right? And you can never really escape that, and that's okay. That's part of who you are. But as somebody who's kind of finds himself oftentimes between two worlds, or three worlds, or four worlds, um, you can see the different worlds overlapping, interacting. You can see how they interact with each other. A lot of people, both in the upper and the lower, or even the middle echelons, cannot, like, simply cannot jump outside of their world, and
Yeah.
just literally do not understand what other people are saying. And I've had an experience with this recently, and it was like, at some point you just have to kind of give up, be like,
Yeah.
you're never going to understand what working class people mean by like fair, because what a working
Hmm.
class fairness means something different, right, for a working class person, at least in my experience, than it does for like an upper class person, right? Because fairness for I was actually talking about this with my wife, my unnamed wife, who you also know, Elliot, recently, that for like a working class person, fairness, quote unquote, means something like a fair shake, that I was
Yeah.
given a fair shake and that I extend a fair shake to other people. And fairness, so it's very much like outcomes based, because there's not a lot of wiggle room. The budget's tighter. You just have to
Yep.
make things work. And that for an upper class or even a bougie person, fairness is this kind of disembodied concept of like a feeling, an emotion, a perspective on fairness. And for working class people, it's really like, does it work? Did it work?
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
fairness being realized, manifested in this moment? Right. And if the answer is no, but people say that it's fair, well, that's clearly not fair, right? And so I think that this connects back into our discussion here, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
the there is something to this, and I think that this is, if anything, I'm arguing here for people in different classes to reach out to one another, particularly different classes on the right, because
Yeah, that's the
class is
important thing. Yeah.
class totally exists. It is real. It is a real thing, and it will always be a real thing, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't mean this in a horrible Marxist way. I just, it's like, it's an observable trait, right?
Well,
It's
the
like,
Marxists are trying to eliminate class. That's their
right,
problem.
right. Well, and so basically what I'm arguing for is kind of like a Steve Saylor noticing, but for class too, right? Like,
Hmm.
notice class, because some people who find themselves in the borderlands between multiple notice it very, very, they really notice it, right? Like, because I mean, I'm without going into too many details, but you know this, my job situation is so insane that I will literally jump between classes within one day. I go from white collar
Hmm.
online to working class in-person closing shift in one
Yeah.
day, and
Yeah.
I have to change the
Yep.
way I act, look, talk.
Yeah.
I mean, everything has to shift over, right, in order so that I can be successful in both spheres. And obviously, I don't recommend that kind of a lifestyle for anyone necessarily, but if you have an opportunity to reach across the aisle, and I mean I mean condescension and elevation, right, both ways. I think that that's also important, and I really, to maybe an attempt to truly tie it up. If Trumpism is real, which it is, and we find ourselves in this sort of schizoid right wing sphere, which JREG has so nicely summarized and presented in this video that we're reacting to. Watch the original video, everyone. I think that that's okay, right? Because you can find a common ground, right? You can find a piece in the feud, which is maybe right now Trump, maybe in the future it will be Vance, who knows, right? But I think there's something to that. And again, this is proof positive right here. You get a actual one of the most pure ANCAP people I've ever met in my life, which is Elliot. Like, you were so
Oh
like
yeah.
you're actually one of the few true ANCAPs I've ever met, because most people LARP. Um, and then you have some sort of whatever I am, neo Crunchianary, right? And we were like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, but what is like, we can disagree and have fun and argue, but what is happening? Oh, well, it seems like things are maybe getting a little better, or maybe a little positioning, a few chess moves ahead to get better, right? So that's a positive thing. We're trying to end on a white pill here. Um, Elliot, final thoughts,
No,
contentions,
that's a pretty great white pill to end on. I mean, just we are a fan of JREG, one of the most important philosophers of our time,
truly,
unironically,
truly
and
meta
yeah,
ironically, is he with it? Meta ironically, he is truly one of the greatest living political philosophers. Yes,
it's so true. I mean, because political philosophy has been dead. I mean, gosh, when you're declaring the end of history right before 9/11, right? Like,
Fukuyama.
you done messed up. You feel me? Right? Like, God.
Fukuyama done fooked up. Yeah, for real. Like, for real. He seems like a
So
nice older gentleman, but he does not. Yeah, he does not get it. He can't. They just
he's
can't get it.
so, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that they're trying to end history is obviously, like, anyway. So there you go.
resist Hegelianism, embrace humanism, and yeah. So, all right. Well, this was probably long enough of a rant, probably too long, but if you made it to the end, please give us a like. I don't really know what it does for the algo, but it does something. It makes us feel good. And yeah, please check out other stuff. I'll do a few quick drops here. If anyone doesn't know by now, I do so I once a month I do an episode, a special episode with the Scarlet Thread Society, which is connected to the Timeline Earth family of podcasts. Go check that out on Patreon if you're interested. Yeah, follow us here. We do stuff every once in a while. I'm trying to be a little bit more regular on Wandering Humanists. It's difficult with life, but I am trying. Thank you again, Elliott, for making time today. So that's what I've been up to. Elliott, do you have anything you want to shout out? Things that you've been doing? Things that you've been doing?
Uh, not specifically, although I gotta say I'm having some crazy mathematical, theological conversation with ChatGPT recently. That's been really interesting.
How about
Um,
this? How about we bring you on and do an actual, just dedicated episode in a couple of weeks, just wherein you, a smart person, attempt to explain to me, a midwit, what you mean by that. I think that
oh,
would
that's
be,
a good point. Yeah. That's a
yeah,
good point. Yeah, I keep
that would be
forgetting it.
fun.
It's not clear to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you, Elliott. Thanks to everyone who's watched, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.